Welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. The coronavirus pandemic has become an existential threat for the European Union. Major European economies have been ravaged by the crisis. But EU leaders are still unable to agree on an adequate economic relief package. On Thursday, all 27 EU leaders met via video conference. Top EU executives were also a part of this meeting. While the worst-hit countries like Italy, Spain and France called for economic grants, Germany, the Netherlands and Austria were in favour of loans. All leaders agreed that an expanded 7-year budget plan is the only way to avert a recession. The European Commission has been tasked with formulating a revival budget for the Eurozone. The EU's 7-year budget normally amounts to around 1% of the bloc's GDP. But Euro Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen wants to bump this up to around 2% of the GDP, or €2 trillion.
The next 7-year MFF budget has to adapt to the new circumstances post-corona crisis. We need to increase its firepower to be able to generate the necessary investment across the whole European Union. And therefore we will propose to increase the so-called headroom, that is to say the space between the existing ceiling in the MFF and the own resources ceiling.
An expanded budget is a contentious issue. The wealthier EU nations like Germany will have to contribute more, something German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reluctantly agreed to, but other countries like Austria and the Netherlands are not in favour. Also, keep in mind that Britain's exit has left a huge gap in the EU's budget. The burden of filling this shortfall will inevitably fall on the likes of Germany. French President Emmanuel Macron went a step further. He called for a budget that amounts to between 5 and 10% of the Eurozone's GDP.
La France défend une position extrêmement claire en la matière. D'une part, il nous faut être à la hauteur de cette réponse, décider le plus tôt possible les réponses les plus fortes possibles. Nous avons su, sur le plan monétaire, répondre tôt à nos besoins. Il nous faut, sur le plan budgétaire, continuer pour les phases à venir, celle de la résistance et celle de la relance, décider tôt et fort. Il nous faut donc cette réponse forte qui est à la mesure de ce que nous voyons aujourd'hui, 5 à 10 points de PIB au moins.
The leaders also approved a €500 billion bailout to support businesses and to boost the health infrastructure. The European Central Bank chief, Christine Lagarde, warned of dire consequences. She said that in a worst-case scenario, EU's output could fall by 15%. Now, the ECB is calling for a strong and flexible recovery fund that will kickstart the bloc's economic resurgence after the outbreak. Now, our correspondent Rob Watts is joining us live from Berlin for more on this. Good afternoon to you, Rob. It's great to have you with us. EU leaders have agreed to set up a massive recovery fund to help the member states to get over the economic effects of the coronavirus outbreak. What is the plan?
Well, you were just hearing there from French President Emmanuel Macron, and he has described the coronavirus crisis as the moment of truth for the EU, because the way in which European Union member states pull together on this issue will be defining when it comes to saying whether or not there really is such a thing as EU solidarity. So yesterday we had an agreement that seems to at least hint at the willingness of all parties to invest in the well-being of the entire bloc. They've agreed to this recovery fund that you mentioned that could amount to something like €1 trillion, which will be taken from the EU's next 7-year budget. Now, there is not agreement on exactly how big that contribution should be. As you've just been talking about, you've got the states like Germany and the southern states in constant disagreement over such issues, also over whether or not this money should take the form of grants or loans. But they have at least come up with the concept, which is that this money should come from the 7-year EU budget. And also, as you mentioned, they signed off on this €540 billion fund that will be in the more short term used to help businesses across Europe and indeed economies across Europe to survive the immediate costs of this pandemic.
Right, and there was, of course, a lot of division heading into this, loosely along a north-south divide. What is the mood like now?
Well, there has been, I would say, a slight change in tone as a result of this meeting. It was the fourth meeting by leaders of the member states since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. It was all done by video, as you might imagine. And at the end of it, Charles Michel, who was chairing that meeting, he is the European Council president, said that, the well-being of each individual state depends on the well-being of the entire bloc. And the countries are starting to pull together. Now, Emmanuel Macron, to quote him again, said that there remain massive differences, but a key change in tone has come from Giuseppe Conte, the Prime Minister of Italy, the worst hit country here in Europe from the coronavirus. He said that great progress was made yesterday, and he's been highly critical of the EU's pace in responding to this crisis.
Right. And Rob, what attempts are being made currently to get the German economy back up and running?
Well, over the past week, we've had a few developments on that. A few milestones have been crossed. For example, the big driver of the German economy, if you'll excuse the pun, you don't have to, is our car makers here. And this week, Daimler, who make Mercedes cars, and Volkswagen have both started reopening their factories here. Good news for them, but also good news for the showrooms that they sell those cars to, and also for the whole supply chain that gets the parts that go into those cars. So that's a big development. Also this week, we've had small shops in Germany being allowed to open for the first time in more than a month for many of them. Any shops with an area of less than 800 meters have been allowed to open their doors once again, start making money, and that's good for small and medium businesses and also the people they employ.
Right, and on that, with regard to the lockdown measures that are in place, talking about shops opening up slightly, these lockdown measures are loosening in Germany. What is the situation like now for the general public?
Well, people are being allowed to go out more. I mean, for example, here in Berlin, where it's nice and sunny, as you can see, they are allowing people to go out and maybe meet up with one other person. But as that loosens, other rules are being imposed. For example, to use Berlin again, from Monday, if we want to use the public transport here, we'll have to wear masks. And across Germany, there's been a move towards the wearing of masks. Different states, there are 16 states here, each of them setting their own policy on this. But some of them have made the wearing of masks compulsory now out in public. Others are a little bit more cautious to do that. The return to normality is beginning, but Chancellor Angela Merkel yesterday gave a speech to the German parliament in which she said that this is extremely fragile. She said Germany was walking on the thinnest of ice, and she even hinted that perhaps some states are moving a bit too quickly.
All right, Rob, thank you very much for that report. That is DW correspondent coming to us live from Berlin for the latest on coronavirus.